I had to sign in under Suzanne's Zoom credentials because her internet's out. But we should be good to go here. I've got all the controls I need. Um, can everybody hear me? Make sure everything's working all right. Either just throw something in the chat or
We can hear you.
perfect. All righty. So you see, we've got a new quiz. It's in the chat with it says to get started. Here's a link to today's quiz. So if everybody just like Wednesday, just we'll take a few minutes, fill out that quiz.
We can't see the link to the quiz.
Let's see. That show up? I just threw it in the should be in the chat box now. Everybody see it? All right, so I'll give a few minutes to fill that out. And without Suzanne here, I can't see when everybody has submitted it. So um yeah, I'll just check in a little bit. If you need more time, let me know. All righty. I'm gonna get rolling here just because we started a little late. If you need a little time to finish up, um, maybe in our break we'll take a break midway through and hoping to take some questions too at the end of this, so maybe we can fill it out then as well. Share my screen. All right. So I'm gonna recap a decent bit what we went over on Wednesday. I just think it never hurts. So basically, we started off with just understanding what is typically in the package and how it's broken out. So you download this link to a bunch of drawings. Towards the beginning, you're going to have your general information drawings, your cover sheet, your drawing list. There's probably going to be a general note page that we discussed. And there could be some other front end drawings, anything that applies to all the trades are going to be there in the front end. And we know it's important to read those general notes, anything that applies to all trades towards those front end drawings, towards that cover sheet. It's really important to read those notes. And we use this drawing list to make sure that the package of drawings and documents that we downloaded, excuse me, is complete, because this list of drawings will be complete. So if whatever you have doesn't include all the drawings listed here, you got a problem. So the way that we are tracking these drawings, or that we know what drawings are what, is the information on the sidebar. And the sidebar, as we discussed, is this block of information. And again, sometimes it may be on the bottom, but most typically it's on the side. The most important function, in my opinion, of the sidebar is the drawing tag and the drawing description, because that's going to allow you to flip through a bunch of drawings relatively quick, know what you're looking at without having to analyze what's actually happening on the drawing to figure out what you're looking at. They're all labeled. And as we mentioned, those labels are pretty typical. So if we go, I think we're in here. So some typical label designations, you're going to see A followed by numbers for architectural. You'll see C followed by some numbers for civil. Fire protection has a couple different ways they'll show it. Sometimes it's FP, sometimes it's P. Plumbing, mechanical, etc. They're mostly logical. If a certain trade starts with a letter, for the most part, that's its letter designation. They don't do anything too silly in that regard. So that's how you're keeping track of where you are down here, is your numbers and your numerics. The numbers will change. Different engineers, different projects do different things with the numbers, but I mean, they'll be pretty self-explanatory as you go through the drawings. So the other thing besides that code, it'll just tell you exactly, for the most part, what you're looking at. And I will get a live set open here so we can look at that as we go. Oh, I also wanted to mention, in case, I mean, this is kind of on the estimating side of things that we're going into next week. But if that, we got a question here. Oh, just hello. All right. Just in case anybody's wondering what this is, Bluebeam, this program I'm using to view these drawings. This is basically a little bit beefier version of Adobe, in that it'll open PDFs, and you can write notes on it, you can mark it up. What makes it different than Adobe is it does have measuring functions. And again, we're going to get into all this next week, but this is kind of your most basic estimating software, I would say, one of your most basic. But it's also, even if you don't use it for estimating, it's a great tool for viewing these documents, because it'll automatically bring the drawings into scale. You can see that down here. So if you printed out this drawing on physically on a plotter, it would be 3 feet by 2 feet. It'd be a big old drawing, and that's how to make it to scale. This program will automatically read that and keep it to scale. And then I would set my scale here. Again, we're going to be going over this a lot next week, but I
What's the
did
name of
want.
the program?
This is Bluebeam,
Okay.
and it's yeah, I recommend it. It's really nice for just viewing the documents and shuffling through them. And you can get pretty fancy. I won't get too crazy because you can do a whole presentation on software, but Basically, you could set it up here automatically, uh, by doing a few things, a few clicks over here. I can have every page labeled down here, and it just makes it easier. I can click on G101, and then I can click on P202. It's a good program to help you organize and get through batches of drawings. Adobe will also do that though. The only difference between, or the main difference between Bluebeam and Adobe is Bluebeam does have counting and measuring functions. So it can act as a basic estimating tool. So yeah, so we're still talking just quick about the sidebar. So that's your tag, your drawing name. That's going to help you shuffle through the drawings. One thing I failed to mention Wednesday, I talked about this block here. This is a pretty typical block that's going to show the different drawings, whether it was conceptual 2 years ago, and then there was a schematic drawing a year ago and design. Um, but this will also be used to track addendum. And addenda are something we're going to cover again in estimating. It's more of a live bidding exercise. An addendum is when they change something about the drawings after you've started working on it. So they found something late. They needed to change an area on the drawing. They release an addendum, and those addendum drawings will be listed here. So it'll say, the first addendum was released on this date and addendum one. And that's important because you want to know that you're looking at the most up-to-date drawings. So I think Wednesday, I said if you're not doing design build or you're not involved in kind of the design phase, that you don't need to worry about that. And that's not really true. This will also keep track of changes made after they've released the documents. So this will track addendum. And that, we'll revisit that when we're going over estimating and takeoff, but I wanted to clarify that. So going back to a review, with drawing list, the sidebar, the scale might be in the sidebar, the design team info. We're talking about general notes. Again, there's going to be, a general note page towards the very beginning of the package of drawings, before they break out into your individual scopes. And I would encourage everybody to always read those general notes, even though sometimes it may not end up affecting your particular scope. And then each trade, once you get into your particular trade's drawings, will typically have a note page of some form. It might just be a small block of notes to the corner of your cover page. A big job may have something like you're seeing in front of you where it's an entire page of notes. That's going to depend too. If we'll get into the specification book again next week in estimating. This is just purely drawing reading, but there is a big book of specifications that go with these drawings. And sometimes really on a smaller job, actually, if it's a smaller job, they might skip the specification book and just write all their notes on the drawings. But that's why, my main point from Wednesday is don't skip drawings. Sometimes they're boilerplate, sometimes they don't have a lot to do with you. But or I'm sorry, don't skip notes, is what I meant to say. Read notes. It's a bit of a pain, but better safe than sorry. So then we started to get into the different types of drawings that will be included in each package. We talked about the cover page, we talked about a note page, and this is again within a particular set, within the A set or within the M set. And then you're going to get into your plan view drawings. And we talked about the plan view, that's the overhead view. It's really the meat and potatoes. It's where you're going to be doing a lot of your takeoff. Again, it depends a little bit on your particular scope of work, but for a lot of folks, that's where the takeoff is going to be happening. So I mean, this is a plan view drawing here. Again, we're just looking at it from above. And that footprint will stay the same for everybody. Um, we talked about some of the symbols. You're going to see symbols all over these drawings. There's a few different types, I would say, of symbols. You've got, equipment symbols, stuff tied to schedules. You've got very generic symbols. I think the example I used on Wednesday was a ball valve. It's not tied to a legend or a schedule. You're just supposed to know it's a ball valve. But the most important part, or the most important lesson really about symbols, keyed notes, anything on the drawing that's confusing you, is to always be looking for your legends. It'll be either on each particular drawing. It might be, as this is on each drawing, has its own legend because we've got these keyed notes. And we talked about keyed notes. These are very common. This is a tool engineers and architects will use very often, where this could be a square, it could be a triangle, could be a circle, could be an octagon, but it's going to be some shape with a number in it. Each number is going to correspond to one of these notes. And if we go down to the actual drawing, we'll see all these numbers and they're pointing. And the point of the reason for doing this is because if they were writing out all of these notes everywhere it applied, it would just be impossible to read. It would be a block of paragraphs covering the whole drawing. So that's the reason for this, and that's how it works. So they're just saying 16. So you want to know what's going on here. You got 16 in your key note. Again, the shape will match. A big complicated job, you might have a couple different sets of keyed notes. So you might have a 19 in a square and a 3 in a triangle. But when you go up here, there would be another one of these things with a triangle in it. So it would be clear to you, that the triangle with a number, that's all these notes. The square with a number, that's all these notes. So that's a common symbol tool you're going to see there, keyed notes. So note 2 here is saying new existing GWB header, see reflected ceiling plan. So it's actually kind of a pick your own adventure. It's telling you there's something going on here, and here's the best place to find the information on it. And that's not uncommon either. If one drawing has the best view, maybe the interior elevation, which we're going to get into when we pick up on the new stuff, but it might direct you to the best place to get the most information on this. Maybe this view, this 2D view, just isn't the best way to show it. So this note's actually telling you to go to a different drawing to go see what that drawing has to say. Aside from keyed notes, let's go to one of the trades. The trades have the most symbols. That's why I tend to use, or a lot of typical symbols at least. Yeah, okay. So if you're in one of the trades, let's get to a semi-busy drawing here. It's kind of sparse, but it's not actually a lot of symbols being used on these. But if you were doing a drawing and you weren't sure, there's always a symbol legend. So this is telling you everything that's shown on this plumbing drawing it's letting you know what it is. So if you're coming across something and what are they trying to show, it's always worth check your legend somewhere, either on the beginning or on the drawing itself. There's going to be a legend telling you what these notes are. And even so far as abbreviations. So that's a big one. That's something I've used very often. You might see something in the notes that uses an abbreviation, and you might go, "I'm not sure what that abbreviation means." This is something that is very commonly provided as well with legends, is just your common abbreviations. So really, these drawings pack a lot of information. That's one of the biggest things I want to drive home is, don't fear all the drawings. A lot of them are really just to help you once you kind of understand what they're trying to show. So those are, each trade will have their own symbols. Each trade will have their own cover sheet that looks something like this. Again, the size of the project determines how much they can show on one sheet. This is a relatively small job. So they've got their symbols and the plumbing notes on one page. A big job might have only room for drawing symbols, abbreviations, and all these notes need a dedicated page. But if that's the case, it's going to be, the second page up or the third page up. The overhead information will be at the beginning. So we talked about plan views, some of the stuff you will see on the plan views. We got into, I believe we were in elevations for new stuff. And let's see. Does anyone else, before I guess I get started on new things, did anyone have a question that maybe they thought of since the last training on anything we went over on Wednesday? Pretty good. Okay. So I'm going to start back on exterior. I know it's what we ended on, but I'll overlap a little bit. So exterior are kind of your next set of typical drawings that are included in a package. So you've got your front end information, you get your plan views, and then you're going to have an exterior. Exterior is more of an architectural thing and structural. You really, I guess you won't see too often like a mechanical or an electrical set of drawings that is an elevation. It might be a detail, but this is pretty much an architectural thing. It's going to be in the A series of drawings, but it's something everybody should look at because chances are it will affect your scope of work in some regard, even if it's just as a reference. You want to know what the outside of the building actually looks like. Um, if there's, especially if it's an older building, there might be, ornamental things on the facade that you need to look out for. So it's a set of drawings that will typically be in the A set, the architectural set, but it's something everybody should be aware of and should check just to make sure it doesn't affect your scope. So we're going to look at one again soon, but typically on the exterior elevations, it's showing your windows, doors, any exterior venting. It's going to show facade finishes, exterior light fixtures, louvers. So that's how you can see it kind of, it will show things in other scopes. But it's also important for logistical. This is, when you're actually estimating and creating an estimate and doing a takeoff, you're going to want to check this sort of thing for logistical matters in terms of rigging. It might give you a little more information on, can you put a crane on that street, or is there a sidewalk there that, prohibits that, or they're tiered. roofs. Is there a lower roof? That means you're going to have to, reach over to put equipment on a higher roof. Um, it's a good reference drawing to give you a better visual idea of what this thing's actually going to look like. Because, like I said, most of your takeoff's probably going to be done on a 2D overhead view. Um, so it's good to break out of that. So this was the elevation, an example of an exterior elevation. And they're going to be labeled north, south, east, west. It's pretty typical. Just to give you the full 360 view. And as you can see, it's showing you the windows. It's showing you the storefront setup, bunch of notes for your storefront setup, some louvers. Here I think it's showing an equipment screen. That's something difficult to show on a 2D drawing. But this would be the exact height if you did things with equipment screens. Um, this would be your drawing. This would be the one you're looking for. Let's see if I can get one. And I know it's not the most professional thing in the world to be flipping through drawings, but I actually think it kind of helps to reinforce a little bit of what we're talking about in terms of I'm just taking a peek at these numbers and the description to try and get to where I want to be. Um, and you're just seeing the kind of different information that we're going to be checking shortly. So this is another set of elevation drawings, or these are interior, which is our next one. Want to get a better exterior elevation that we can zoom in on. Yeah, okay, yeah. So it's the same one, but we can zoom in. I just want to show you guys some of the things they're describing here. So just checking through these notes again, we've got a wide array of uh, scopes of work in the group, but it's giving you glazing notes. It's going to give you notes on the masonry, reuse salvage masonry. So that's, probably a pretty big note. Um, they don't want you to provide brand new masonry. That's where this is shown. So when you're doing your estimate or takeoff, you need to make note of that. And it looks like that's typical for this shading. And we talked a little bit about shading, hatching. It's going to have a legend just like symbols. So somewhere they're going to show you what all these different colorizations and markings mean. There's going to be a schedule for this or a legend for this. Then yeah, we talked about just some of the less obvious things you might find on here and what makes them worth checking out, even if you're not a mason or you don't do doors or windows or glass or whatever. But here they're showing you, the depth of some electrical conduit, some sub slab piping. They're going to show it on their individual drawings as well, but it's a good check. If you finished or if you are reviewing a plumbing drawing and they didn't include, and you're a GC or they're under you in some way, and they didn't include anything below slab, you might stumble on this drawing and bring it up that, well, the elevation shows there's sanitary pipe under the slab, and a check for yourself if you are the plumber and somehow in the plumbing drawings you went through the whole thing, didn't really see anything below slab. Um, but then you check on this just for fun, just to double check, and they're showing something. So you go back and you check and double check and make sure that this drawing is wrong and not your plumbing drawings. Because again, people, engineers, architects do make mistakes all the time. That's why there are addenda that we talked about earlier. No matter how hard they try to get these drawings to be perfect, chances are one of you guys or one of the contractors bidding is going to find something wrong, submit an RFI, which is just a question saying, you've got this shown on this drawing, but not on this drawing. Please clarify which one is accurate. But yeah, it is just good to double check. Use multiple drawings to check things you're not sure of. So this is just another resource to check. Or it might be, depending on your scope, what you do most of your work on. Again, if you're a mason, these exterior elevations are going to be a big part of what you're taking off, maybe the biggest chunk. So just like exterior, there are interior elevation drawings. Um, and these show up in a couple different forms. We'll try to go through and find examples of the most common. But if you are a finish contractor, painting, um, painting, wall protection, um, stuff like that, this is going to be your big set of drawings. It's going to have a lot of reference for you. It will be the most clear presentation of paint finishes, wall coverings, wall protection accessories, floor guards, etc. It's also going to be if you're let's see, what is it? I think it's Division 10 contractor who provides things like toilet paper roll dispensers or toilet partitions or anything that gets fixed to a wall. I'm trying to think of a better example. Yeah, mirrors, chalkboards, and like if you're doing a school, whiteboards, like that sort of stuff. That's going to show up probably on your interior elevations because they're difficult to represent on a 2D overhead view. That wall, that whole wall on your plan view is just a black line. Um, so you can't see what's under it. So these interior elevations are going to show you what it looks like inside that room, and it typically will be broken up by room. And we'll go through some of those. Um, larger, you know, larger broken up drawings may have interior elevations for just finishes like we just described, going through each room, showing you, what is painted, what color, and where the chalkboard is mounted, where a projection screen might be mounted. It's going to give you the heights. There's also typically going to be an interior elevation for stairwells, because there's a lot of specific information that goes into just stairwells and their construction. So it will be like a cross section of a stairwell. That's something you will see. That's what it's showing, and it will be labeled on the above that drawing tag. If there's any question, take a look at that label. Sometimes they're easy to see what they're trying to show, sometimes less so. They'll also might have an interior elevation for elevators. It's again going to kind of depend on the complexity or honestly, if the engineer or architect had time to break out all these drawings. We all have to fight the time monster, so that plays into this too. Um, so let's take a look at some interior elevations. Again, I had put it on the slideshow, but I don't think we can see anything on this. So I think page 30 on this guy. So this is an example of an interior elevation. It's not a lot going on here. We'll find a better one, but let's see what they're saying. Yeah, so just a general note that I'm not educated enough in that particular area to know what it means, but um, yeah, so this is looking at the the entry doors from the inside and just giving a bunch of information on what this is actually going to look like um, from an elevation view. Let's find another one. So this is kind of more what I'm talking about with finishes. Looks like so they'll give exactly what room they are referring to. So this is Lounge 111, the northern view, and it's giving you your finished stuff. This is what it's actually going to look like on the inside. So it's telling you to paint this wall PT1. I guarantee PT1 is on a finish schedule and refers to a certain color of paint. And we're going to go to our schedules a little bit later. But schedules and legends very similar. They are assigning meaning to either a symbol or a tag, which is what you'd call just a series of letters and numbers. Things are tagged. And a schedule is just explaining a tag the way the legends we looked at before explain a symbol. Um, so when you see something like this, there's probably a schedule explaining it. And we're going to get to those schedules soon. But that's what they're showing you here. So they're saying all this is PT1, which again is going to be a type of paint type and color. See here, they're saying paint the steel trusses, PT2. This means typical. Again, you don't necessarily have to memorize it. If you're saying PT2 and TYP, what is TYP? What are we going to do? We're going to go to a cover page. We're going to try and find that list of abbreviations that we saw. And TYP is always going to be on that list of abbreviations because it's used very, very often. So again, just kind of actually looking at a real note, you don't need to necessarily, nothing in here is really memorization. PT2 is going to change job to job. You just need to know that that's on your finish schedule. TYP, if you're just seeing it for the first time, maybe you look on the abbreviation list, you'll find it pretty quick. So that's what it's showing. It's giving you all the details for the inside. This would be hard to represent on a plan view drawing. Why did I pick the worst plan view? But you can see here, I mean, these are busy as it is, but what they're trying to show you is, what's actually going on in this wall that is just aligned to you. So I'll go through some more. Yep, so you can see each room is getting its own elevation. So that's why when you're a finish scheduler or a finish contractor, these are really going to probably be specifically painting, I should say. If you do painting or you're worried about painting, interior painting, your interior elevations are going to be more your bread and butter than probably the plan views because you can actually get square feet from a takeoff using these. And again, we're going to go over it more, but um, this is all to scale. Oh yeah, so that's something we covered Wednesday is finding your scale. Pretty much always going to look like something like this. Going to be under it. So these little guys, each one has its scale. The plan views will have one overall scale. Again, these are completely different drawings, different engineers. It's always showed pretty much the same way, either under the drawing, very occasionally. Actually, this one's got it both. So There you go. Sometimes it's down here, sometimes it's over here, sometimes it's both. But always be checking scale. And for me, that's set down here. Just gonna do it again. We're kind of getting into estimating and takeoff, but what did I say? I already forgot. Quarter inch. So now whenever I measure anything, it's going to be accurate. But yeah, so they're just trying, this is a 2D overhead view. You can't get too much from it. This is flipping. Now you're actually in the room looking out that window, and you can get square feet of paint. You know, you can go through detail by detail for your interior partitions. I want to see if I can get you guys a stairwell. Okay, yeah. So this was again, this was a pretty decent sized job. So this is your stairwell and elevator shaft interior elevations. Again, so depending on your scope, this might mean nothing to you. This might be the most important drawing for you. Um, but so that's why these drawings all kind of serve a purpose. They're not all going to impact you, but you should just kind of be aware of them, right? And what they're doing, because maybe you just do run into a question where knowing um, exactly how the stairwell is laid out. And this is like what am I trying to say? A riser shaft. So this is for all your conduit piping. They're showing you here. This is where all your risers are going up. And it's just kind of a better visual representation of something that you're going to be taking off on a flat surface. So it's just, just good to see. Just another reference for you. So this is another more complicated stairwell elevation. Um, yeah, it might not mean a lot to you, but they threw it in here because it means a lot to somebody. So it might just be a reference, but just know they're there. So you've got your exterior elevations, just going to do a snapshot around the whole building. And then you've got interior elevations, which are a little more involved. Um, and you'll get a few different forms, whether it's just, what color to paint the inside of the wall, room to room. These more complicated stairwell elevations, which are going to give you, probably the slope. I'm not a stairwell contractor. I don't know if that's a specialized contractor, but I imagine, the slope is something where there's a landing. Those would all be things that are difficult to show from an overhead view. So that's why they provide these. Typically, interior and exterior elevations will be together. Um, I don't know if I would say interior usually precedes exterior. So if you're clicking through drawings, you'll probably fall into the interior. You'll know that you're getting close to the exterior. So again, that's just a tip on navigating these drawings. Elevations start after your plan views 90% of the time. Um, and it typically begins with interior. So again, you're doing a takeoff. You got a question that might be answered in an elevation. You start clicking through the drawings, get a little further down into the architectural. Remember, these are all A set drawings. All these interior and exterior elevations are A set drawings. A's, those architecturals are kind of your baseline drawings before you get into your niche ones. Um, yeah. So now we've got our cover page, we've got note pages, we've got plan view pages, we've got exterior elevations, we've got interior elevations. Um, they're all just providing reference, they're providing different views. It's typically not brand new information, but that's where we're at. So now we're into single line diagrams, also kind of called isometrics, although there's a difference, but I see them often referred to as the same. But single line diagrams are there to present a much more clear representation of the system. It's much more diagrammatic and it takes away all the other clutter on a drawing. There's no walls, there's no ceilings, there's no other equipment. It's really, I would say, I'm trying to think of exceptions to this, and I'm sure there always is, but they're mostly tied to MEP systems, all of them mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. I would say on any decent sized job, we'll have an ISO or a single line diagram. And they're great checks on whatever you did on your plan view drawings when you're taking off. Again, because there'll be a much more clear representation of the system. And it often does contain some additional notes and clarifications that might not be shown on plan view drawings. So let's see, we can get a good single line. I apologize, I didn't break one of those out. So we're going to go to a plumbing or a mechanical. So maybe. Okay. So this is more of an isometric than a true single line, but we'll find a better single line. But basically, it's taking away everything else on the drawing. And, I guess the caveat with these are you really can't use them to measure. These aren't to scale. If you tried to click here, click here, click here to get a linear footage of pipe, they're not to scale. They're just a more clear image of what's actually happening on maybe a more busy plan view. So isometrics are kind of the single lines on steroids. They're probably going to be the more typical as software advances and these sort of renderings become less difficult to do. Um, but yeah, so these isometrics are really showing you a detailed view of what's actually happening on the drawing. So for reference, you see all that stuff happening, but on the plan view, it kind of just looks like this, right? So it's showing here's your pipe, but they can't show you depth. They can't show you every little 90 and every little bend on this overhead view. So we're kind of skipping ahead here, but I don't think that's a problem. So that's what this is saying up here. This is another symbol. It's towards the back of our presentation today, but this is a drawing call out. And this is also on a legend. So none of this stuff anyone would expect you to memorize. I want to call attention to it. And again, I want to hammer home that these things are explained somewhere on the drawings, but this is a drawing call out. And what it's telling you is go to P drawing P401, and it's boxing this area. So what I know, because I've been staring at these things for 15 years, is that this is going to bring me to either an ISO or possibly just a blown up drawing of whatever's in this box. it's bringing me to another drawing. So let's go to that drawing. That's what it's telling me to do. So we're at P201. That note says 1P401. So we're at P401. This is note what? It is not note one. Where's note one? I got it counterclockwise for some reason. So this is note one. So see that? It matches 1P401. So that's what that box is telling us. It's like, um, it's just this little, not much here, not a lot of info here. If you really want to see what's going on inside this wall here with the pipe, go to this diagram. So these, it's just additional information for your reference. It isn't a brand new bathroom to take off. And, that's kind of another point. And if you just needed, well, I keep picking the wrong one. And if you needed just kind of confirmation, these folks did a pretty good job. They're also labeling it. So it's restroom 126 and 127. So even if you didn't necessarily know how to read those drawing notes perfectly, it's telling you restroom 126 and 127, as you see here. So that's another kind of just flow to these things is they'll tell you where to go and what's being shown there. And that is done with these call outs. And you'll see that done with elevations as well, especially interior elevations that we showed you. So that's what these are all here. Actually, these might be exterior, the way they're positioned. But these are the same call outs. You can see in the circle. The difference here with that arrow is they're actually showing you what direction you're looking when you go there. Unfortunately, I don't have the full set of these, so I can't follow it, but it would be the same thing. We would go to drawing A405, and there would be a bunch of different little drawings. One of them would be labeled one of them would be labeled two. That's a different A404. See, that's a different drawing. So these two are on one drawing. And those are going to coincide with an exterior view looking that way. And I guarantee it's giving you information on the window jams, because these are all windows, I believe. So that's, another drawing call out. And you can see them, they're going all the way around. So if you had a question about something that was happening on the exterior of the wall in this general area, you would be going to drawing A402 and looking for the detail labeled one. And it's just giving you more information on there's something happening on that exterior line. So that's what these drawing call outs. Here's another one like we just saw. So this is saying go to A700. Again, these drawings are super busy. It's not it's good to see because it does happen. But I mean, this is really what you're trying to avoid by breaking up drawings in different sections is this kind of mess of lines. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but that is really the whole purpose for the structure of these drawings and having different sections showing a different view and notes. So instead of having all these big paragraphs, these, not it doesn't even have to be a big paragraph, but just a few words up here, it just makes it more difficult where they'd probably be better off with a few more key notes. So instead of having this whole thing, you would just have an A or a two in a square, and then you'd have the note up here somewhere to make all this easier to read. But that's what this one is telling you. Go to A700, and it's going to be probably a blown up picture of, see, I can barely even trace the box, but whatever the box is here, it's going to be a better, more clear picture of that. So, I mean, maybe that is how they decluttered this is there appear to be areas shown here on other drawings So maybe those areas are a little clearer on these drawings, but you'd still have to go through and try and read these the best you can. So that's just another symbol. That's a drawing fallout. That's pretty common. Um, so single line. Yeah, I want to find another single line. That was really more of an isometric. Ah, here, perfect. So this is a classic single line diagram. We're calling it a flow diagram. This is mechanical. Let's go a little deeper. So as you can see here, it's purely informational. It's not to scale. It's not showing you anything else. But if you just kind of wanted to know, especially equipment, this is going to be one of the easier ways to count equipment. You don't want to depend. Your plan view is really your best way to count it because um, it's kind of what they spend the most time on and it's the most checked. Everybody's looking at the plan views where these single lines might be done last. They might be more prone to not having everything, but I still love these things, these single line diagrams, just because they make a messy plan view um, much more clear. So I'll show you the plan view version. So yeah, so here's a plan view of a mechanical drawing. I mean, it's not a huge drawing, so you could pretty well see what's on this, but it's semi busy and there's other stuff. So if you just want to check that you counted everything and maybe there's sometimes if something is stacked, for instance, maybe you missed a coil that's stacked under this coil because it's an actual, they're going to show it how it's going to be installed more or less on this plan view drawing. Whereas if you go back to your single line drawing, they're just going to show you in this simple diagram what equipment is on the project, how it is attached. This is not uncommon. They're giving you your sizes, your duct sizes here. You can't do your takeoff here, unfortunately, because none of this is to scale. You know, this diffuser is not actually this distance away from this diffuser. You have to get that information from that plan view drawing, which is to scale. Um, but yeah, these single lines are really good to know. Again, really, especially if you are an MEP, um, it's gonna, I like to look at them before I even get into anything because it's gonna give you an idea of the system before you start taking off. Um, yeah, it's showing you your condensing unit. I want to show you. I feel like we had some electrical folks. So let's see if we can get a good. An electrical usually has some good single lines. That's mechanical controls. Don't let me down, electrical. Hmm. So this is kind of unique. This electrical doesn't have its own single line. It does have its own interior elevation though. That's kind of unique. So this is giving you mounting heights, it looks like. Yep. So good to know if you were in, I think we did have a few electrical or it's like security electrically or tied to electrical contractors. So this is something you will also find on the architectural. I believe that will show you the mounting heights of, your light switches and your clocks and fire alarm devices. But your electrical drawings may show them as well. That's what's happening here. So that's an interior elevation specifically for electrical. I do want to show. Don't want to spend too much time looking for it. Actually, I'll look for it when we take our break. I'll look for a better interior or electrical single line. Actually, speaking of break, we're uh we're at the hour mark, so let's do a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 11:15. That works for everybody. And I'll look for that drawing. Yeah. Alrighty. Hopefully everybody's back. Um, so I want to stop again, check my speed going through all this. If anybody has any questions about any of the new stuff or old stuff that we're covering here, feel free to throw it in the chat or speak up. Thank you, Vicky. Okay. Okay. We'll plow ahead here. Yeah, I don't know how many people were staring at the screen during that break, watching me desperately try to find a good electrical single line. Um, the issue I have on this particular computer is I do a lot of the pre-bid estimating that we talked about on this computer. So those single lines are kind of typically the last thing to get done. Um, and that's why I had to through so many projects that have incomplete drawings before I found a decent one. And this one is actually for fire alarm, but it's going to look the same for a lot of the different electrical systems. You can have these for security that would show the different door locks, and cameras, and glass break sensors, if that's your niche. And then they have these are for all your fire alarm devices. And again, none of this stuff you have to memorize. All of these are going to be on a legend. Although, after a while, that's going to be a combo horn strobe. A lot of these will become typical, but everything shown here is going to be on a schedule or a legend. But what this is just giving you is rather than going through the whole plan view where there's a lot of other stuff going on, this is just the most simplified view of the fire alarm system in terms of, what the devices are. Usually, again, this will be kind of one of the last things added. Doesn't look like it's here yet, but usually here is where they'll give you conduit sizes. If you are on the electrical side, they'll wrap these and tell you what your feeder conduit sizes are, and some of the cabling requirements might be on here. It's just yeah, again, it's these single lines are just the easiest to interpret representation of a system. So you'll have them for fire alarm, you'll have them for uh, plumbing. We'll typically have one for domestic water, and one for sanitary, and one for sewer, and one for gas. So they'll break theirs up by each individual system. Mechanical as well. We'll typically have one of these for duct work, which is what we saw before, and they'll probably have one for piping as well, any heating and cooling piping. So these single line diagrams they're good sources of information. They're good references, um, and they're pretty typical. Even though I had to spend 10 minutes trying to find a decent one, but that's because I do a lot of work before these things are complete. And this kind of backup reference type drawings are the last ones to get done. They want to lay out everything first, and then they'll help you understand, unfortunately. So that's just another single line for electrical. They'll pretty much all follow, look something similar to this. Another common electrical one is we'll have the panels all filled out, and we'll have the feeder for each panel. Okay, yeah, so here's an even better one. As you see, these are being marked up by an engineer as we estimate. These are not something you'll typically see on a completed set of drawings. This is a pre-bid design type of estimate, so they're giving me notes as we go. But this is actually the electrical I wanted to show you because it's showing you all your panels and the feeders. So these symbols here, you can guess it, are going to be tied to a schedule. And here's that schedule. So F1 is two sets of three gauge wire and a 2-inch conduit. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 gauge ground. That if you do electrical, you care about that. But so that's on this single line. That's not going to be on the plan view. That's really good information, and that's what they're showing you here. The only thing you can't get here are the actual distances, right? Um, so you still need your plan view so that you can actually measure how many or how much linear footage of what's F2 again. So between PP3A and PP4A, there is a 3-inch conduit with 4 sets of some pretty heavy gauge cable. So I mean that's the info you get here, but you still need to go back to your plan view to actually see what this distance is. So that's how they kind of all play together. You likely won't be able to do all your takeoff on by just looking at one sheet. You need this sheet to tell you what your conduit and cable is, and then you need to go back to your plan view to actually get at least an estimated different distance between this panel, and they're giving you the room. It's in electrical room 305, and this panel on the upper floor. Because room 403, maybe not only a floor above, but on the other side of the building. We don't know unless we're also checking our plan view. But from this, we know what's between them. That's what it's showing here. So just another example of drawings working together slash you having to check several drawings to get the information you need. But yeah, so that's single line, some good info that's typically shown, whether it's conduit, cable, or it's duct size or pipe size. Um, you know, it's just another good source of information for you to know exists and to know basically what it's trying to tell you. So the next set of drawings typically in a package are details, and we've talked about these a couple times already. So every trade will have their own details, and all a detail is taking a magnified look at a certain item or a certain area on your drawings that contain more smaller aspects to it than can be captured on your overall plan view. That plan view is kind of the most general view of it. It's used again to keep your plan view drawings from being too cluttered. And details can often be used to create assemblies. And I threw that in there. That's an estimating and takeoff term, assembly. But it's good to get it in everybody's head early, I guess. So this is a mechanical detail. So on a mechanical drawing somewhere, this whole unit and everything that's shown is likely just going to be on the drawing as a little box labeled, maybe it's AC. This thing's probably scheduled somewhere. I've ripped it off a drawing. But on your plan view, this is just going to be a little symbol, but it's going to have the note to this detail. And this detail is going to show you that included in this symbol is all this kind of hookup piping, these coil connections. You got some valves, pressure regulators. Again, all this stuff is going to be in a legend somewhere telling you exactly what it is. These label it nicely for you. So you got your isolation valves, water hammer arresters, there's just little things associated with this piece of equipment that are being shown in the detail. Because the plan view, if they had to show all of this stuff with every single one of these, that plan view would just be a mess. So again, the plan view is kind of a simple-ish look at the whole floor and whatever system's on it. But whenever it tells you to refer to a detail, and that works the same as those drawing call outs we were looking at before that tell you to go to a drawing, go to an elevation. There's going to be a similar type of symbol if there is a detail tied to an area saying, go look at this detail page for more information. And I'll quickly touch on it because we're going to go again on this in estimating. But if you were to be taking this off and, to create your estimate, you could create an assembly, which is, account for all these things. So kind of go through, I've got 2 ISO valves, I got 2 pressure regulator valves, 2 gauges, and create a unit price that includes all of this, or a takeoff symbol that includes all of this. And then if that way, if there's 30 of these, you're still just kind of clicking, you count 30 of them, and then you apply that one number that includes all of this to all 30 of them. So you're not doing this 30 different times, is the point. That's the point of an assembly. If something consists of smaller pieces, you take it off once, including all the small pieces, and then you go to your plan view and you count how many of them. So for instance, this was a boiler. There's a lot of piping, valves, gauges. They might not even show an expansion tank on the plan view. That might all be on the detail. So if you happen to have a boiler plant with 6 boilers, you would take off that detail once, count it 6 times, and then when you spit out your estimate, you've got everything accounted for. You wouldn't want to have to count all these things and take off all this pipe on the plan view drawing a bunch of times. It would just get messy. So I guess, when you're hearing it first, it might sound complicated perhaps, but it's actually to make things simpler. Um, when you see this, when you see an autoclave on a plan view, just know that it also includes these sets of valves and piping. This is a really common mechanical plumbing type of thing. So in architectural, it's heavily used. And the first one I'll use, because it's like the most prevalent, would be details on partitions, which is what is showing here. And I know I did a pretty good breakout of these. So yeah, so we can get in here. So each one of these details is going over a type of partition because these walls have different insulation values, different thicknesses, et cetera, et cetera. So each symbol here, or I'm sorry, up here, refers to this detail. So if we go to a plan view drawing on the architectural, each wall in that drawing is going to have one of these symbols. And if that's your scope of work, if you are somebody that if you're I guess if you are a GC, you will have to apply this detail to each one of those walls. And so this is a relatively complicated one, I guess, but um, yes, this is a lot of different partition types, I would say. Usually there's, I don't know, there seems to be a lot of different partition types, but they all do look like this. It's giving you the thickness, it's giving you the insulation requirements. Um, so this one has sound attenuation, and those are all going to be the best. But on a drawing that is doing a lot of new partition work, if it's new construction, for instance, every one of these partitions that you're seeing here would have a tag next to it, would have a little symbol next to it. And that symbol would bring you back to a detail page exactly like this. And that's how you would know what walls or what thickness with what insulation value, um, how thick is the gypsum board. That's where that's all going to be provided. So you'd go to your overall plan view, overall first floor plan. Unfortunately, this project just doesn't have a lot of new partitions, but I don't want to spend too much time looking. If this were new construction, every one of these walls would be tagged, labeled, and you would be going to your partition detail page to see what that actually represents, right? So these are probably going to be thicker, better insulation value than these. Your exterior walls, you're going to have a furred in detail that's going to tell you what it looks like from the masonry or whatever on the exterior. So these are all going to have a different tag than this one. So if you're a GC, that's super important to you. That's a detail page that you will have on every job. Any job that has a wall works that way. It's going to show you here with just a symbol, and then every job's going to have a partition detail. Um, Again, this is a busy one. This has a lot of different types of walls, but it's all going to look like this, and that's how they show that for the most part. So yeah, mechanical plumbing, it's a lot of equipment, getting a closer look at equipment and coil connection requirements. Um, Architectural, your details are going to be um, your partitions. There's also going to be details for structural, I don't know, structural, site and civil, that are really going to go into um, how things are reinforced. I think this had a few structural details. So these are partitions continued. This is actually a much more um, simple partition detail, as you can see, far fewer. I want to find get outside. So yeah, so this is again outside of stuff I typically see or that I personally work with. But if you do any kind of structural work, you see these very often. They're going to tell you how all your joints are set up. Um, I don't want to stay. I've spent a lot of time on the interior. I'm not sure if we have any structural or civil folks, but every it's going to be the same. So if there's that's telling you to look at a certain S500. I think we're on S500. So this little corner, they're saying there's something special about that little corner of this. It's like a garage door. So on this sheet, that's note 7. What's note 8 or detail 8? So this is detail 8. So that's what it's telling us to look for. See that? It's saying look at note 8 on S500. So this detail is actually an even closer look at that above detail. But it tells you, it's telling you exactly where to look. Um, so yeah, I mean, it goes into a lot of like this is way more detail than I will ever need to know for any of my estimates because I don't do a lot of structural. But I guarantee there's somebody, a structural or a carpenter or someone where like this is the important detail. And everybody's got their important set of details. But it's different for each person. So again, I just say that so, if it's your first time viewing a set of drawings, there's a ton of them. You start flipping through, you see stuff like this, and maybe it's discouraging, but besides just knowing that these are details and what their function is, you don't really need to know what's going on here if it's outside of your scope. But it does, these all kind of work the same, is my main point. The main point of this class is really just how are these put together and why are they put together that way. So yeah, so details are just close-ups. They're more information. You can't get this level of detail on a plan view that's from 300 feet and showing a bunch of different stuff. But if it's important, and that's kind of this, I guess, the subjective part of this, um, if it's important, they will typically call it out, tell you to look for it, and give you a bunch of information on it. Again, I don't know enough about structural to know why, this little corner was worth a second, um, a second detail, but I imagine has something to do with the reinforcing or the way these are cut, or something that means a lot again to a carpenter. So that's just another example of details kind of outside of my scope. These are details, kind of you're merging worlds between details and elevations, kind of. Sometimes a detail will be an elevation view of a certain spot, which is what's happening here. But again, main point of a detail is a close-up view of an important or of a piece of equipment, an area, even like this, a joint somewhere in the building that you need to know there's more information there than is shown on the plan view. Again, the plan view is going to be a few symbols, some notes up in the corner, but they're not going in and giving you this level of detail on a plan view drawing that you're using to take off. They're going to show that in a detail. Geez, time. We're going time. Schedules. So I've referred to these a bunch of times already. They're pretty much the same idea as legends. These legends are giving you a description of a symbol. Schedules are used to provide specific information on pieces of equipment or materials. Common schedules are mechanical equipment schedules, plumbing fixture schedules, lighting fixture schedules, door and window schedules, and finish schedules. Again, anything can be scheduled. All it means is it's being shown on the drawing and listed elsewhere with a full description. But those are kind of I would say the big ones, the ones I see a lot. Schedules will either provide detailed performance and system requirements for equipment or add detail to an item that shows up as a symbol. Schedules are what vendors often need, along with counts and specifications to price equipment and materials. Again, that's no, that's whether it's mechanical equipment, electrical equipment, plumbing equipment, or your GC and you're sending out to door and window folks, kind of their first look is going to be at a schedule. So let's quickly try and get some schedules. So this is a big one. So this is the door schedule. And I did pick a kind of crazy one. Um, Not necessarily accidentally, but it's good to see a crazy one. The simple ones are easy. So a door schedule is exactly what it sounds like. Every single door on a project, I would say new or existing, because a lot of architects will still tag a door and just label it existing. But every door on a project will have a tag number, something like this, and it's going to correlate to this schedule, and it's going to tell you all this information about each door. So the width, the height, the thickness, is it hollow metal? Is it stainless steel and glass? Um, the hardware, does it have electric lock sets on it? Does it have a that prevents it from slamming the baffle or whatever it is? So again, somebody out there really cares about doors, and this is the info that they really need, and this is the best view of that info. So if you are not necessarily always tied to doors, but you're a GC and someone's asking you a quick door question from one of your vendors, your door schedule is going to be your quickest reference because it's going to give you, again, dimensions, just some basic information, but a lot of good information. The specs book goes into more. We don't worry about that right now. So this is an example of a door schedule. So again, that's what this is showing. See these symbols here? These are all doors, and each one of these is going to be here. So I only have the second floor here, but that's how they're working together. So get out of that. Again, so each one of these doors, this is a busy drawing, but you can still see um, every door on here. It's the 109, 102, 112. They all come back to this schedule and it gives you information. On the mechanical or plumbing side, plumbing, you'll typically just have a fixture schedule. There's less to it, but mechanical, and these are typically at the end as well. So if you're looking at flow, usually schedules are some of the last few pages. So mechanical is very heavy on equipment. Um, it's probably one of the few where equipment is as costly as labor, close to it. But this is really, again, I'll talk more in estimating and takeoff, but if I was doing a mechanical takeoff, I'd probably start looking at this schedule because it's going to tell you what big equipment's on there. It's going to kind of give me an idea of what to look for. Um, and these are all the tags. So when I go to my plan view, all that will be there is, maybe a square, some sort of symbol, and it's going to be tagged ODU1. And I'll have to go to my schedule to see how big is it, what is it, more importantly, who I have to go to send out for pricing. It's a Lennox unit, so I'd go find the Lennox representative and go out, ask him for pricing. I'd probably send him the schedule along with anything else, but this schedule will give your equipment vendors a lot of what they need. So again, everything on here This is going to show up on the plan view as a square of some kind labeled ERV1. This is the boiler, same deal. It's just going to be a symbol on a drawing labeled B1. All this information is held on the schedule page. So when you're doing your takeoff, you kind of need both. So when I'm setting up a takeoff, I'm going to have B1, 184 MBH boiler, and that's how I'm going to take it off so that I know it. So again, schedules, very much like our legends, are just giving information on a tag. The difference kind of being, these tags are going to change on every single job. Um, and schedules are typically equipment, where legends are just kind of general symbols telling you what means. Whereas, these tags are very specific pieces of equipment with capacities and, everything else. So, all the way down to your grills, registers, and diffusers. Every grill, register, and diffuser is just a little symbol, but if you care about this sort of thing, if it's got a little A next to that symbol, it's a 2x2 6-inch neck aluminum diffuser. And you'd send this out to price to get pricing. So again, if you see if you see a number or a series of letters or some sort of nomenclature next to a little symbol, it's probably scheduled somewhere or it's in a legend. But if it's an individual piece of equipment, it's going to be on a schedule. Again, typically towards the back of a drawing is how these things flow. Starts off plan view, and then schedules, single lines, details. They might be in a different order, but I call them all just reference drawings. Typically, the reference drawings are towards the end. Again, the bigger the project, the more typical is. If it's a smaller job, um, sometimes you get a smaller architect or a smaller engineer that does things a little bit differently. But you work in city or state or something like that. These sort of reference drawings, again, schedules, single line drawings, details, are typically towards the back. And it makes sense because, as you're doing your takeoff, as you're going through the plan view, you'll see a symbol, click a few ahead, see what it is, go back and forth that way. Because you're not going to memorize that. This isn't about memorization. It's about knowing where to look and understanding how the drawings work. All right, keep going real quick. And anything I don't get to, I can kind of merge into estimating and take off next week. Yeah, so I do want to go over kind of a less typical drawing. There's a few different kinds of that. Um, Phasing drawings. So this would be something that is on those initial general drawings that we talked about that are so important, including notes, things like that. So if a project is phased, which means you can only work in certain areas at certain times for any number of reasons, might cause phasing. There will typically be a drawing that shows you what is phased and why. And I broke one of those out. Oh, okay, yes. So these are phased drawings, and there is going to be one drawing that details the different phases. And I thought I had cut that out too. Well, essentially, it's going to kind of coincide with this. So this is I don't have enough time to dig it up, unfortunately, but this is a big project, and as you can see, the whole footprint is broken up into different areas. And one of the reasons it's broken up into these different areas, besides just clarification, because this would be a huge drawing, is this project is phased. And the way that they phase is they may say, areas M and L can be done in the summer of 2023. Areas B and C can't be done until areas M and L are complete. Areas D and E have to be done in spring break of 2024. So that's kind of the basis of breaking up these drawings into different areas. And you can see here, as we get into the actual plan view takeoff, they break up their plan views per their phasing. And that's so you can take it off properly, because if it's phased, you're going to want to know how much labor and equipment or labor and material is associated with phase 1A. So they're going to show you on each drawing and label it phase 1A. And this is actually also showing you where you are in the building, which we saw before too. So we're still in phase 1A, but now we're up in this area, which is still part of phase 1A. So we know that this whole area is phase 1A. And we keep going. So this whole area is phase 1A. And the drawing I was looking for would tell you all the areas associated with phase 1A. It looks like it's probably this whole top half is phase 1A. But that's another drawing you'll see is breaking up into phasing. And then the plan views will also be broken up into the proper phasing, or they will be dashed out like this. And it will be kind of on you. So that, not as good set of drawings may have this whole area shown and just use a heavy dashed mark to tell you what's included in each phase. I don't like that because if you're taking off, it's easy to just take off a stick of pipe right past that line and keep going if you're not, keeping close attention. But that's just another drawing you might encounter is breaking it up into different areas. And that's typically done because it's a big job and or it's phased in some way where you have to be able to keep track of different areas. I'm gonna talk about a lot of these two in estimating and takeoff. We're running out of time on some questions, but just some other things that you might see on a drawing that we might not have covered. They'll show you elevations, and that'll be on your elevation drawings, and it will be pretty clear what they're trying to show. They'll show you the foot, and it'll be under a line that's showing an elevation. If you do any welding, there are specific welding symbols, and and the ways that they show thickness of welds and all the different weld types. I'm not too privy on those, and I could find some examples, but unfortunately we're running out of time. But the main point, somewhere on those welding drawings, on those structural drawings, it's going to explain the symbol and what it means. Altitudes, depth. We showed you room numbers. Again, you'll see them. They'll be self-explanatory for the most point. Sometimes below those room numbers, they'll tell you the ceiling height. Again, you just might see a number there. That's what that is. It's giving you a ceiling height. There's different ways that they show some finishes. Actually, I think I might have shown. Yeah, like this guy is actually, I believe, pointing out different finishes. And it changes drawing to drawing, but again, it's telling you to go A600. On A600, there's going to be more information on what this actually means for this job. And again, just to drive it home, whatever you're looking at, there's likely a legend or a schedule towards the beginning of your sets of drawings that are going to give you the information you need on what that is. Um, and again, that is really the biggest point to drive home is, um, don't panic, don't get frustrated. If you're running into something that isn't making a ton of sense to you, now that you know that there are these kind of other reference drawings, take a minute to look around, see if your question makes more sense on a single line diagram. Maybe that clears something up for you. Maybe an elevation gives you the answer you're looking for. Maybe you remember to go to that legend and the abbreviation and the cover page, and you figure out this abbreviation that's been stumping. Um, so yeah, so that's really, it's not so much memorization. I feel like some people look at this stuff and they say, I'm never going to remember all of this. Screw it. You don't have to memorize it. And that's going to come whether you want to or not, just from looking at these over and over again. But until that happens, all the information should be there for you. And if it's not, it's on the design team. It's their fault. You send an RFI saying, I need more information on this. So yeah, so that's generic kind of overview of blueprint reading, how they're set up, why they're set up that way. There's no replacement for just kind of staring at these things for a long time and flipping through the pages um, and seeing how they work. But hopefully, you guys got an idea of how these things are put together and why and where to look for help. When there's no one talking at you for 2 hours, you can find this information on the drawings if you know where to look. So we have 5 minutes. Any questions? Would you say most of you guys had already known some of this stuff in terms of blueprint reading? Have you guys been looking at a lot of blueprints?
I definitely was unfamiliar with some of the terms and different areas that you went over. So it did break down, you know, where and why. Just a better explanation of what I'm looking at sometimes. So that's good. Thank you
Awesome.
for that.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I just do basic stuff, but this is great though. This is just enhances a lot of stuff that I need to know and be able to understand. So this is good stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, just want to ask to that because again, a lot of this stuff is going to coincide with next week estimating and takeoff, and I don't want to be going too. Yeah, I just want to get a gauge for everyone. So, um, okay. So no questions. Does anyone need more time to fill out that test, or we pretty much all filled out? Okay. All right, guys. Well, thank you as always for taking a Saturday morning to learn about blueprints, and I hope everyone has a great weekend.
Yeah, thank you. It's great information and have a nice weekend and a nice holiday.
You too. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you Tuesday. Bye.
Thanks.